Hello, everyone. I am Kim Snyder, and thank you so much for joining me for the Sane Crypto Podcast, the first cryptocurrency podcast for baby boomers investing for retirement. Most people believe that crypto assets are too risky for the average investor. I believe that the risk is in not investing, and in fact, cryptocurrency may be the answer to near retirees' prayers. The Sane Crypto Mastermind is my signature program for those who want the diversification benefits and return potential of cryptocurrency, but, can't, won't, or just don't have the time to figure this all out and keep up with it on their own. If you would like to learn more, I'd encourage you to join my free online training called How a Little Bit of Bitcoin Can Increase Returns and Hedge Against Financial Crisis at sanecrypto.com/retirement. All right, this week we're going back to the listener mailbag, which I really enjoy, so I'm glad, for an Ask Kim question. This one is from Dinny, and she, I'm making an assumption that it's a she based on the spelling, says, what is the biggest mistake that you've made as an investor? And what advice would you give to an investor like me to avoid making the same mistake? So in this case, Dinny doesn't really define what an investor like me is. She doesn't give any specifics about her particular situation, but it doesn't necessarily matter because the answer that I'm going to give you is applicable really to almost anyone who is investing. So for me, this one's really easy. In fact, I've literally written an entire book about it called How to Be the Family CFO, 4 Simple Steps to Putting Your Financial House in Order. And I will, of course, put a link to that in the show notes. But in a nutshell, my biggest mistake was abdicating responsibility for my finances to someone else without understanding the conflict of interest that they had, without understanding anything, really. So the quick and dirty version is that after college, really by dumb luck, I went to work for a company in Dallas as a part-time clerk in their purchasing department while I waited for school to start. I had just moved to Dallas thinking that I was going to get my MBA. At the time, the company was doing about $36 million a year in sales. And because of a series of pretty improbable events, like the 2 full-time people in the department running away in the middle of the night to get married on my 3rd day and never coming back, I ended up staying with the company for about 8 years, never got my MBA. Over that time, the company went from $36 million a year in sales to over $1 billion a year in sales, and I went from being a part-time clerk to senior management with the company. The last project that I worked on before I left, along with lots and lots of other people, was taking the company public. Now, you may, if you've had this experience, you may know this, but because a growing company, or one that's growing that fast, is perpetually short of cash, because again, this was way before the internet bubble or competitive VC markets like we have today. So much of our salaries were paid in stock options. So on the day that we went public, I was theoretically, if I played my cards right, set for life. And I hadn't turned 30 yet. But as you can guess, I didn't play my cards right. Far from it. Even though I had been to some of the finest schools that this country has to offer, I knew a lot about corporate finance and running a business, but I knew absolutely nothing about personal finance and investing. So I did the thing that social proof told me I should do, which was to turn all that money over to a broker at a big name, well-known Wall Street brokerage firm who said that they would just take care of everything. I didn't need to worry my pretty little head about a thing. And I didn't. I proceeded to quit my job and have a really good time. Until 2 years later, the phone rang and someone says, "Ms. Snyder, sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your money's all gone." Every penny that I had not managed to spend, which was admittedly a lot of money on a lot of really foolish things, they had managed to lose. In a bull market, no less, which is no easy feat. So, yeah, that was by far my biggest investing mistake. But fortunately for me, the story didn't end there. It took years because not only had I lost everything, but I was in debt up to my eyeballs, over $100,000 in debt. I'm not even sure I remember the exact number, but it was in the six figures, which is, a story for another day how I managed that. But what I know now, with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, is I would not trade that experience, that mistake, for anything in the world, because everything that I am today, everything that I believe, everything that I have learned as a result, everything I have, really, I have because of that experience and deciding that I would never, ever, ever be in that situation again. I would never put myself in a position where someone else had control over my financial destiny. I was absolutely determined that I was going to figure this shit out, that I was going to learn this, that I was going to be responsible from that day forward for whatever financial situation I found myself in. Not the government, not my employer, not my husband, my CPA, certainly not a stockbroker, me. If I screwed it up, so be it. But at least I would know that it was an honest mistake made with my best interest at heart, and it would be something that I learned from. Right? I just call those mistakes tuition. And the more expensive the mistake, the less likely I was to make it a second time. And that is how I ended up on a very windy path towards helping people with personal finance and investing. First, it was just to learn for myself. And then gradually, I started to teach it to other people, friends at work mostly, who asked, what I was doing. And then gradually it became their friends and friends of friends and then their parents. And it just eventually took on a life of its own until one day I looked up and I actually had a business doing something that I loved that I never planned to do. And since that time, I've had the privilege and the honor of helping literally tens of thousands of people take control of their financial future by learning how to manage their money and invest for retirement. I invented an investment method for my own use that later came to be called, not very originally, the Snyder investment method. My registered investment advisor firm, which I have since sold, had at one point over $500 million under management and consulting using the Snyder method. And we were on the Inc. list of fastest growing companies in America 2 years running, 2008 and 2009. But I never set out to be a financial engineer or investment advisor. It just happened. So yeah, now, 25 years later, I wouldn't trade that mistake for anything. Now, to Denny's second question, what advice would you give to an investor like me to avoid making the same mistake? My answer would be simply do what I did, which is to learn. Find someone who's getting the verifiable result you want. That is a really key word, by the way, verifiable result that you want, and learn from them. In the absence of anything better, just do what they do until you have enough knowledge and confidence to make it your own. That is exactly how I started. And don't wait. Start now. Because you have to understand two things. First is that personal finance and investing, I like to say it's a life skill, like swimming, that I believe deep down in my bones every single person has to learn to do, even when you think you don't. For example, did you know that of the elderly living in poverty, 3 out of 4 are women, and 80% of them were not poor when their husbands were alive? Or that in the first year after divorce, a woman's standard of living drops an average of 73%. Or that, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I think it's like 70% of women will be single at some point in their lives. Right? The time to learn how to swim, is not after the boat has capsized. Okay? So even if you think someone else has this handled, that may not always be the case. Okay? Personal finance and investing is probably the most important education you will ever have, because more than anything else, it will dictate whether you live out your old age comfortably or miserably, able to do what you want to do, or constantly worried about every single dime. It's the difference between living in a nice home and having good care as you age, or living under a bridge eating cat food. The fact that the schools still don't teach this is just inconceivable dereliction of duty in my book. I mean, I get it. If you're a teacher, I get your challenges. I'm saying the school system. It's just, I just don't get it. The second thing is that time is not your friend here, okay? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Or to put it another way, it's a lot easier to keep up than to catch up. No one tells you this forcefully enough, and young people especially need to hear me when I say this. I know the financial crisis freaked out a lot of people, but you must invest. You must invest, because you can't possibly save enough to pay for 40 years or more in retirement. That didn't used to be the case when we had employment for life and guaranteed pensions and a life expectancy of 70 years old, so we retired and we died. But today, a 65-year-old couple has a 39% chance that one or both will live to age 90, and a 14% chance of living to 95. And oh, by the way, that's from like the 2004 actuarial tables, which is pretty old. I feel pretty certain that we're, if we haven't already, about to push those numbers quite a lot with the advances in medicine and genetics that are just around the corner. So you must learn how to do it, how to invest, and manage your money as early as possible, because if possible, and it's not always possible, but if possible, you want to be the tortoise, not the hare, okay? You want to keep up, not catch up. Now, of course, Wall Street wants you to think that all of this is rocket science and that you need to pay them to do it for you, but it isn't. Anyone can do it. I'm living proof of that. But you can't wing it. This is so important. You need to learn and implement. It's, by the way, it's not complicated. Okay. It's actually simple but difficult, if that makes any sense, right? You need to learn and just implement a few basic principles, which is the simple part, and then leave it alone, which is the hard part. Any honest investment manager will tell you that the less you do, meaning the less you look at it, the less you think about it, the less you touch it, once you've set it up with these basic principles, the better you will do. So, in case you're listening to this and hopefully I've motivated you, where do you start? Well, one place is my, that I would recommend is my family CFO curriculum, which you can find at, hang on one second. You can find that at sanecrypto.com/reading. That will take you to the show notes of episode number 27 of the podcast. And if you will scroll about halfway down the page, you'll see a big blue box. And that big blue box will get you to my Family CFO curriculum and resources page. Now, if I had to pick just one book on that list to read, it would be mine. And not because it's mine. I don't even get the royalties from it anymore because I sold it with the intellectual property when I sold my investment firm. But here's why. Because I wrote it to specifically fill that role. It is a very fast and easy read. My grandmother read it in one, and she was like 92 years old at the time, read it in one sitting. And I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but I wrote it just like I was sitting down for coffee with my very best friend who asked me, "Hey, Kim, what's been your biggest mistake? And what do I need to do to avoid making the same one?" What a coincidence. That's what Denny asked, right? Okay. So as always, I hope that you found that helpful and thought-provoking, maybe a little kick in the pants that you need to get going on something that you already knew was lacking, but just haven't been motivated enough to tackle. If it was, I have a huge favor to ask you. You know it's coming, right? LD LaBelle left a 5-star review on iTunes for me, and she wrote, or he, I'm not sure, wrote clear and concise investing advice. I'm newer to the podcast, but find Kim to be an exceptionally clear thinker. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, LD LaBelle. I appreciate you so much because I know that your time is precious and it's really hard to sit down and do those reviews. So if you get value from the podcast the way LD did, the biggest thing you can do to help me spread the word is to 1, subscribe. iTunes likes that. 2, leave me a 5-star rating. iTunes likes that better. And 3, give me a review with comments and feedback. iTunes likes that the most. Or just tell a friend, either in person or on social media. I'll take that too. Also, if you'd like to learn more about why I think Bitcoin could be the superfood of investing right now, I would recommend my free online training, which is called How a Little Bit of Bitcoin Can Increase Returns and Hedge Against Financial Crisis. You can register for that at sanecrypto.com/retirement. You can get the full show notes of this episode, including links to any of the resources mentioned or used at sanecrypto.com/podcast. And finally, if you have a question about today's topic or anything else, just email me at AskKim@sanecrypto.com like Denny did. I read and answer every email personally, as well as answer some of them here on the show. Everything I say on the show is for educational purposes only. Nothing should be considered investment advice. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk, so do not under any circumstances invest money you can't afford to lose. That is it for me. I am Kim Snyder. I'll be back next week. Until then, may the crypto gods continue to smile on us all.